Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to part three of interviewing people from Shenmue. My guest today is the guy that played the two baddies of Shenmue, Lan Di and Chai. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Paul Lucas onto the show. So, Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Hello, everybody out there. Thanks for joining us. Jack, thank you for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
Good, good. Well, first thing I'd like to ask you today is how did you actually get into the whole world of acting?
The whole world of acting. It's funny you should put it like that because it is an entire world. Uh, yeah, yeah. It's kind of a fake little phony world. But it is actually a very big industry, obviously, isn't it? So the world of acting encompasses gaming, as you know, it encompasses movies and stage, live shows, um, internet, computers, and commercial work. You name it, the actors are needed for a variety of different sorts of jobs and entertainment sources. So anyway, I first got into acting when I was working as what we call a grunt in at Lucasfilm back in the late 1980s. And so I was just basically an assistant, and they called me a grunt because I would basically do the heavy lifting. I would do whatever was needed in the particular department that I worked in. That was the animation department. And so if somebody needed some pencils or pens, animators, then I would be the guy that would have to go run out and get them. Or they needed floppy disks. I don't even know if you know what a floppy disk is.
Oh, I do.
Okay. But if we were out of floppy disks and the motion control camera operators needed more disks, I would be the guy that would have to go get them. I'd get boxes and boxes of stuff that they needed for working on special effects. I worked at a place called Industrial Light and Magic in from 1987 till about 1990-ish, somewhere in there. I'm sure long before you were ever born. And that was my first job out of university. And I had a friend who was an excellent animator there. His name's Gordon Baker. And he invited me to come down there and work for Lucasfilm. And so I got that job working at Lucasfilm as a grunt. And then one day they needed somebody to kind of stand in as an extra, a movie extra. Do you guys know what a movie extra is?
Oh, I've done it before, so I'm quite aware of
Okay.
movie extras.
Yeah. Well, we were making a movie called Willow, and they needed somebody to dress up as an old wise wizard. Back in those days, I wasn't very old, and for sure I was not wise, but they made me look that way, and with lots of makeup and wigs and costumes, and I just had this small little part in Willow, playing the part of an old wizard, and that was my first real, actual professional acting job. While I was working there, also, many Japanese filmmakers would come to Lucasfilm and use the facilities and work with the artists there. And there was a Panasonic commercial that we were all working on. And I told the Japanese director that I was interested in acting. I was going to try and do more of it. And he said, you should come to Japan one day because there's lots of acting for Westerners in Japan. I thought to myself that maybe that would be kind of fun. Just so happens I had another friend working in Japan. He was a runway model, really high fashion, super cool dude that, did the catwalk thing. And he invited me over to Tokyo and had me stay with him. I did an audition for Sony Handycam. And that was probably in about 1991 or two, around there. and then I got the part of this dorky, dweeby little dude that got beat up by his great, big, huge wife, and that was my first real solo kind of star of the commercial acting job. Was in Tokyo, Japan, and then I did some voice work there. From that job, I ended up doing the voice for that commercial. And then it just took off from there. I kept doing acting jobs. I would go to Seattle periodically. I'm from Seattle, and kind of keep my ear to the ground as far as acting jobs in America. After working in Japan, I then went to New York City and worked as a Screen Actors Guild union actor there, and started doing lots more commercials and more stage plays, and I've been kind of running with it ever since. When something works, you just stick with it, right? So, yeah.
So you seem to have done a lot of commercial work. So what was the sort of commercials you did? What was like your favorite commercial to do? And yeah.
Well, I've done commercials. Most of my commercial work, we're talking television commercials or movies, commercials for movies. You know, oftentimes you'll go to a movie and they'll have commercials before the movies start, right? I remember a time when movies did not have commercials, and actually, when the very first time I saw a commercial at a movie theater, a movie or the cinema, the whole audience booed, boo, boo. We don't want commercials in our movies, but the audience didn't win that fight. Hollywood won that one. So yeah, we still have commercials in movies. But probably my favorite one would be that first one I did for Sony Handycam. That's not true. I did a commercial for the Dukes of Hazzard about 20 years ago or so. And that was kind of fun. That was for MTV, and I did that in America. And I'm always playing the part of some dweeby, dorky guy. And so in that commercial for the Dukes of Hazzard, I was a dweeby, dorky scientist guy. I think I was wearing glasses and a lab coat, and I was testing out Dukes of Hazzard lab experiments. It sounds stupid, but that's commercials for you. They just take stupid ideas and run with it.
Well, you weren't playing a dweeby, dorky character in Shenmue, that's for sure. You played easily one of the most evil villains in gaming history, which is Lan Di, and another one of the villains, Chai. So, what was it like? How did you get the role doing characters in Shenmue, and what was it like playing as Lan Di and Chai?
To be perfectly honest, doing the character of Chai, that just kind of evolved. We watched the Japanese version in the studio with Corey Marshall quite a few times, and just started experimenting with some voices. And the voice that I came up with finally, the voice of Chai, that ended up being what we went with. And it didn't actually start out that way. It started out with just kind of this frantic little weirdo character that just spoke too fast. But then the Japanese character was kind of that way, the Japanese actor, I should say. He was sort of that way, making him talk really fast. And for me, it just didn't quite sound right. It didn't feel right. And so I ended up kind of tweaking it, and the director would say yes to this or no to that. And eventually the voice just starts to shape itself. And in fact, I think the thing that actually caught the director's ear was when I did the Chai scream, right? And then he said, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, wait, let's go in that direction. Do that again. Do that again." And so I screamed again, and then tried to figure out how to talk like that. Well, then Chai was born.
And how did sort of Lan Di come about? How did you get the direction for him?
I remember the Japanese actor for that guy, at least back in the original version. I don't know if they ever went with the original version, but when we're doing this stuff, it's always called a work in progress, or they'll give it a title, and it's called a working title. So even though they might have a full recording of it, it could end up not even being used, right? So you probably have heard stories like that. Actors work out entire scenes and perform entire scenes, and then that's just kind of on the shelf, and they may or may not use it. The director and the producers may agree on it or may not. And so the original Japanese actor, he had quite a resonant, very, very strong voice that it wasn't whispery. I decided to take him down a notch and make him very still and calm, because I think a man who's calm has more control. You understand?
Oh, gee, that gave me the creeps.
Well, it should. So yeah. So I did not. I made a conscious choice not to try and copy the Japanese actors, because I could never do that. And most people can't do that. Not even the best. The best. What do you call them? Actors who imitate, right? Impersonators. Even impersonators can't really get it exactly right. So there's no point in trying to copy somebody. It's better to just take it on with your own ideas and your own energy, and then it will always sound better if it's coming straight from your own gut.
One of the things I heard from from reading up about how Shenmue was developed was that the reason why some of the actors were chosen to play the certain roles was because they looked similar to the characters they played. Do you feel you look similar to any of the characters that you played in Shenmue?
Well, clearly I look like Chai, right? Yeah. So I don't know if they chose me because of that. Well, and it's possible. Usually what they do is they will have a vague notion of what the character might look like, or sometimes even quite a clear idea of what they want the character to look like. And if the actor's voice is suitable, then it probably really doesn't matter what they look like. But what can happen is that the two can morph into one another, so that again, it's this evolutionary process. So a designer or an artist creates a character, with pen and paper, or with a laptop or whatever, and then the actor steps in, and the actor's actual behavior in the sound recording studio can inspire that designer, so that slowly but surely they start to merge. And so, yeah, you can have influence in the way the designing process happens, but I'm not so sure that they hire you simply because you look like the character. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I heard with the localization that Yu Suzuki insisted that some of the people looked like the characters, especially for Corey Marshall. He said, the reasoning why he got that role was because he did martial arts and he somewhat looks like Rio at the time.
Okay, yeah. So again, martial arts, that would have more to do with his physicality and his gestures and body language. So yeah, it can definitely influence that design work for sure.
Gee.
I would say that with Chai, when I started jumping around in the studio, although they did really design most of this around the Japanese actors, so that they were the ones that were the original cast, the absolute original cast. We were just the original English cast. Well, Corey's been in all the episodes, all the versions, but in Shenmue 3, they didn't use me or Eric. I don't know if they used Liesel or not. I'm not sure. But yeah, so again, when they're designing these characters with the original cast, there's going to be more of that process in play, right? So because the Japanese actors are the ones that voiced the original characters. So.
Another thing also to do with Shenmue, with your work as Chai, there's one line that you said in it that was not used for any story element, but it was used when you inserted the Dreamcast disc into a CD player. Do you remember that particular line, and if so, what was your reaction to it?
I don't remember. Yeah, to be perfectly honest with you there, Jack, I've never played the game, Shenmue. I'm not a gamer. I've never played it. And I think some people are surprised when they hear that, but no, I don't really play games, video games. My two sons, they play video games, no problem. But I don't think they're really into the old games. They don't play Shenmue. They seem to be more into what's the latest thing. My youngest son, he loves Fortnite.
But yeah, I'll play you the line here, see if you remember it. Here it is here.
This here is a Dreamcast game disc. The first track has game data on it, so don't go trying to play it.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I mean, you got to remember, we recorded this back in 1999 or 2000, right? So my recollection is going to be a little bit fuzzy. Yeah, I vaguely remember having to tack on some directions and things afterwards. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I somewhat remembered.
You've also done some other acting for games, I believe. What sort of games did you do as well?
Well, let's see. I remember doing some little itty bitty grunty characters for a game called Street Fighter. That was back in when they were first developing Street Fighter. And in fact, the very first time I heard my voice in any game ever was on Street Fighter. And it was in a game arcade in Tokyo. There's an area of Tokyo called Roppongi. And I don't know if it's this way nowadays. I don't think it is. But back in the old days when I was living there, back in the 90s, Roppongi was a really popular area for foreigners to gather and hang out. There were a lot of clubs and restaurants, sushi bars, and the Hard Rock Cafe was there. I think it still is. And so, this was quite a hot spot for tourists to go to, any foreigners, Japanese people that wanted to mix it up with foreigners, get to know each other. It was a really happy, fun place to go. And just, young adults for a Friday, Saturday night would hang out there a lot. There were bars and pubs there. In fact, there was one pub there, an Irish pub, now that I think about it. It was called Paddy Foley's. And that was one of my favorite places. I love a good Irish pub. I got to say, the Irish, you know how to do pubs. Man, they are the best. So anyway, what was the question? I got all distracted by pubs. You start talking about beer, and I lose all track of thought there.
You were speaking about being in Street Fighter, and the first place you heard it.
So I heard my voice in this game arcade in Roppongi, in the middle of Tokyo, which is right by the Tokyo Tower. If you ever see pictures of Tokyo, there's a tall orange and white tower, and that's basically right by Roppongi. So I went into this arcade. My friend and I decided, let's play a little of this game. It's called Street Fighter. And I remember thinking, that name sounds familiar. And we start playing it, and sure enough, there was my voice on one of these little itty bitty characters. And he just came and went. I don't even think that they use the same characters. It's not really the same game that it was, almost 30 years ago. So it would have been something completely different. But that was kind of cool, doing Street Fighter. Can't really, a lot of the games that I did actually were under a working title. And so when they're finally released, I don't really know the names of the games. There were quite a few by Sega. I guess that one wasn't it? And I did some Nintendo games. Can't remember. I did a cartoon. There's this funny little cartoon cat in Japan called Doraemon, and he's this blue and white cartoon cat with a big fat round head, and he's really popular. And he ended up doing a movie and some game that included some American pirates. And so I played the part of an American pirate, being an American, and being my ability to conjure up some silly caricaturish voice, "Almighty." I was able to come up with some kind of silly stereotypical pirate voice. So I can't really remember the name. Well, again, we're talking about the 1990s. So any of those games are long gone by now.
You did mention as well that the games had working titles, so you wouldn't remember them. I was speaking about the same thing to Lisa Wilkerson because I asked if she was in F-Zero GX, and she said, I haven't a clue. It could be me, it could not be me.
Exactly.
I believe some people have said that you actually played a character in F-Zero GX, but you weren't credited for it as Pico. Do you remember that? He was a green alien?
I've played many green characters. I know that. Lots of little creepy little dudes. I've done 100 of them, and I just wouldn't be able to remember.
He drove like a little floating car, and he was dangerous.
Very possible. How old is that game?
2003, so 1 year older than I am.
Oh, why, you little whippersnapper. I had a 10-year high to teach you a lesson or two. In 2003, I would imagine the production work for that would have been going at around 2001. I would have been in Tokyo at that time. If it's a Japanese video game,
yes,
well, it's very possible I could be in that game.
It's a Sega Nintendo game, actually. It was a fusion. It was the first thing they did together.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Eric Kelso is also in it as well as Captain Falcon, and he confirmed that and everything. So
Okay. Yeah. If I worked with Liesel and Eric, with many others as well, Michael Neistat and Brett Coleman, and lots of really fun voice actors. But then around the turn of the century, in the early 2000s, I left in 2002. Right around that time, the gaming industry really was starting to boom, and I mean boom, big, huge money. They were starting to hit $1 billion marks, right, in profits. So that's when more kind of actors from the higher echelon and from the a higher pay grade, actors that Hollywood would have viewed as much more talented than us cheap guys. And so they kind of moved in and started taking a lot of the work from us, lower tiered actors, I suppose you could put it that way. And I saw the writing on the wall, so I just busted a move and said, "Okay, I'm gonna cut my losses, and I'm getting out, blow and dodge." And I took off, went to the United States, and where I continued to work as a union actor. Anyway,
You seem to have actually been in a lot of places. You're currently now living in Singapore. So, what was each place that you lived in like, and what was maybe your favorite part of each place?
okay, well, Tokyo was an excellent place to live as a energetic single man, because there's just so much to do, so much going on. There's a big, vibrant film industry there. There's a very big gaming industry. Obviously, Japan makes loads and loads of video games. And so I was able to really make a decent living working there, um, working only as an actor. Once in a while, I would work on stage in Japan as well. If there was an English speaking part for a character, then I would get that. I would be one of the actors there who would get those kinds of jobs. And I did do an acting tour with the Tokyo Imperial Theater, Toho Geino, they were called, and we toured around Japan for quite a few months, doing a samurai play. And in this samurai play, I played the part of a drunken American sailor. With my affinity for Irish pubs and being American, I'm a natural choice for that, I suppose. And so in this one scene, it's a 3-hour-long play, and in this one scene, I come stumbling in through the doors. I see the star of the show on stage, and I holler out, "Okichi," because that was her name, Okichi. And she comes running over to me, hops up into my arms, very pretty Japanese actress. And we spin around with her in my arms, and I give her kisses on the cheek and on her neck and all across up here. And she goes, "Oh, stop it some more." And then, in Japanese. And then we sit down and we start to have a couple of drinks together. We're reminiscing over our love affair. And then her real boyfriend walks in. Dun, dun, dun. And he tells me off, and I have to slink off stage. That was my entire job for the whole 3-hour play. My scene was about 3 minutes long, and I remember making very good money just being in that one little scene every day for about 6 months. And in fact, every second day we would have 2 shows. It was a really, really good gig. That's the kind of acting job that actors really love to have. Something that you're really sinking your teeth into. It's not in front of a camera. There's not going to be lots of cuts, lots of takes. It's one shot. You got to perform it right on the spot, and that's all you get. So I do love the thrill of acting on stage. It's really fun.
Actually, do speak to me more about your theatre work as well. You've done a lot of theatre work, so speak to me about it. It's a big passion of mine as well. Going on stage, doing it all live. I love it.
You're a theater guy. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so am I. And so, yeah, when I was in Tokyo, I would do whatever theater jobs might happen to fall in my lap. And I joined, while I was there, I joined also a community theater group that was affiliated with the what they call the American Club. In all big cities around the world, there will be these clubs that are affiliated with expatriates from a particular country. So, for example, here in Singapore, we have the American Club, and lots of Americans join that club so that they have, kind of a comfortable place to go to where they can be around people from their home country. There's the Dutch Club, there's the British Club, there's the Swiss Club. The Australian Club, I think there's even a Norwegian fisherman's club or something like that. So there's clubs all over the place that welcome people from their home countries, and it's just a nice way to get together with people from your background. And so in the American Club in Tokyo, there happened to be this theater group, and they were called the Tokyo International Players. And so I joined with those guys periodically, and that's how I met my wife, actually. My wife was also performing in a musical, not that they would ever pay to see me sing, no, but I had this small little character part in this musical. My wife, a really good singer, she had a leading role, and we met, and I kind of got the hots for her, and the rest is history, as they say. And then when I was in New York City, I worked, did an off-Broadway, no, that's not right, let's tell the truth, off-Broadway production. That was, what was the name of that theater? The 13th Street Repertory Theater, and I had a lead role in a show there called What's Wrong with This Picture? Semicolon, or colon, I'm in it. Not one of the bigger shows I've ever heard of, but what the heck? I got paid for doing it. It was a decent little gig. And when you're in New York, there's so much theater going on. It's not impossible to find some kind of work there. And so I did lots of little black box theater shows. The bulk of my work in New York, though, really was in the commercial field. I kind of learned how to be a good commercial actor in Tokyo by doing so many commercials there. And so when I went to New York City, I was really ready to be a caricature or a character in commercials for any Screen Actors Guild union work. So I earned my union card in New York City. I've been acting ever since. And on stage here in Singapore. Let's move on. In Singapore, I've done quite a lot of live acting for Universal Studios here. There's a big, the theme park, Universal Studios, which they have one in Hollywood, and I believe there's one in Florida now. There's also one in Japan. I can't quite remember where that one is. And there's one here in Singapore, Universal Studios Singapore. Every Christmas until COVID hit, and thank you very much, I've been playing the part of Santa Claus. If you can believe this skinny, weird little Chai guy can play Santa Claus. Every Christmas we do this live show with Santa, who kind of dances around a bit, all of his little elves dance around with him. And all the tourists flock to see Santa Claus at Christmas time. So for the whole month of December, when we were doing live shows, I had a great big fat suit, big fat beard, and fat cheeks, and you would never recognize me in a million years, but I play the part of Santa for Universal Studios.
Gee. Well, I could actually imagine you playing Santa, because I've interviewed two guests before you. One of them being Mike Pollock, who did the voice of Dr. Eggman. All right, you wouldn't think in a million years he does Santa Claus for the Macy's Thanksgiving phone app, but yes, he does. And then there was this other guy I interviewed, Carl Bowie. He's like this model, absolute buffed model. Kid you not, muscles and everything. He played Santa Claus as well. But
Santa Claus, the superhero, yeah?
And like, he was completely tan. He had the biggest beard going, and it was it's like a big black beard, but somehow they got him looking like Santa Claus. I have no idea
clearly,
how.
with that range going on, clearly anyone can play Santa Claus. One day there, Jack, you're going to be playing Santa Claus.
I actually would not be surprised at that.
You will. It's something every actor has to do sooner or later. You got to play Santa Claus. Or do you call him Father Christmas where you're at?
No, we call him Santa, and if you're from the Dublin North Side, Santy! How are you, Santy? What are you going to get for Santy?
or as some little kids in America might say, Sandy. Sandy Claus. Sandy Claus.
Oh, gosh. So yeah, before this whole madness started, what was life in Singapore like for you? What is sort of the life over there?
Well, Singapore is very, very near the equator, so we live in a tropical zone. It's very hot and humid. Well, it's not fair to call it hot all the time. Like today, it was just warm, but it's quite humid because the tropics are that way, and so there's lots of tropical flora and fauna. We see a lot of tropical birds around, and when you go to the beach here in Singapore, the water is just nearly like bath water. You could just sit in it all day and never ever feel a chill. It's quite nice. And one thing that's really great about Singapore, which is something that I think a lot of people expect to be able to do when they move to Singapore, and that is to use Singapore as a travel base. So you might stay in Singapore for a while, but then travel to places like Cambodia or Thailand or Vietnam or even up to China. Laos is a really cool destination. People will go to Malaysia or into Indonesia. And all of these places are somewhat tropical or just a little subtropical. And so the weather is, again, really warm and nice. There's loads of resorts and places that you can visit and stay and just kind of have a really nice leisurely vacation. If you just want to relax by a pool in the tropics with a nice drink at the pool bar, which a lot of people like to do. And I would say Singapore is a good destination if you like the sounds of, a leisurely tropical lifestyle. You can find it here, really. The trick is being able to work. Singapore is quite small, and because of that, fact, what's the population? I think it's just under 6 million. It's around 6 million.
That's the population is bigger than Ireland. We have only about 4 or 5 million.
Oh, really? Okay, so it's but it's much smaller than Ireland, though, landmass wise, and so because of that, it's a very densely populated place, and so because of that, for the entertainment business here, there's not much of a market here. If I'm being perfectly honest, we came to Singapore for my wife's job. She was interviewed for a music job at an international school, and they wanted her really badly, so they pulled her down here and put her to work. So I was a tag-along husband at that time. I wasn't sure what I would do when I got to Singapore. But after I got here, I discovered there's a little bit of acting work. So I did a little bit of voice work here and a little bit of stage work and some commercial work here, but it wasn't much. And because the market here is so small, there's just no real money in it. So most people I know, even local Singaporean actors who, they're considered professional, and that's kind of how they make their living, supposedly. Even they generally have to have some other kind of job to support their acting habit. It's very difficult here to make a living as an actor. Most people really cannot do that. So I became a drama teacher at an international school. Not the same one as my wife. It's a different international school. It's called United World College. That's where I work. I work there part-time as a drama teacher. And so I teach students in middle school and high school drama. And it's kind of fun. I like imparting some of my industrial knowledge to the kids, little tricks of the trade, how to perform, or maybe how to approach a character. It's kind of fun to teach kids. Now, after I've been doing it for so many years, I have a little bit that I can offer to students, right? So it's good.
Well, is there any sort of little bit that you can offer, any sort of advice that you could offer for fellow actors looking to get in or whatnot?
Okay, advice for Jack Caffrey. Let's see. Okay, tell you what. When you're working as an actor, and this is probably just basic acting 101 knowledge that you probably already know. It's a good idea when you're working on your lines to really see what it is you're talking about. Some people learn their lines and figure that's good enough. But I think you really need to close your eyes when you're rehearsing your lines and thinking. You need to see not only what it is you're talking about, but you need to be able to envision what it is, where you are in that particular scene. It's really an exercise in imagination, not just coming up with any random ideas. Your imagination needs to kind of follow a logical path. So if you understand the story in the script, then that will help you formulate, some ideas about your character, of course, and you need to channel that character in a way that helps to support the storyline. And in order to do that, you've got to be able to see and understand what it is you're saying. And if you can do that, you'll start to really feel something for what you're talking about. And if you're feeling something for what you're talking about, boom, you are acting for real. You're keeping it real. That's what the goal is, to keep the damn thing real. Because any audience knows when you're faking it, right? And like when you watch Japanese video games in English, you can kind of tell the actors are faking it a lot of times. It doesn't feel quite real, right? I mean, we can be honest about that. And that's generally because we're under a time crunch, and the director says we just got to push this through. We got to get it in. We got to get it out. We got to move. Lots of takes, and then they just hope, keep their fingers crossed, hope one of those takes is going to be a good one that they can use. Oftentimes, we don't even know what the scene is about when we're recording these lines. Oftentimes, we have never seen the actual footage or the video that we're recording for, so we have no context for which to put our character or our lines. And so you can tell when they put the two together, voice and animation, you can tell that actor he's not real. He's not keeping it real. Am I right? Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I understand. I do understand that because, you know, I know for especially some of the earlier games, when a scene would be focused, like a scene would be really focused and everyone would know what the scene's about, it would come off really good. And then there'd be some scenes where it was like, oh, that person says hello, we're just going to put that in because that person says hello and we'll just keep that as the only take.
we have that character's hello from something else. Let's just use that, Bob.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, tape it on there, and then let's just hope it works. Yeah, so a lot of gaming actors get a pretty bad rap for being really lousy actors, and that's generally because it's all stitched together without content, and actors don't quite know what it is they're acting in. I have no idea half the time what scenes I'm performing in. I've just given these lines. So, and so you have to kind of hope this works for the scene, whatever that scene is. I hope this will do.
Well, yeah, well, that's some great advice there. That's some great advice, Paul. Thank you very much for that. And hopefully...
Yeah, and vision. You've got to use your vision.
Yes. I love it. I love it. I do use a bit of it myself as well because I do feel you have to, you know. But I hope that's very useful advice for anyone listening or watching.
And if I may add to that, that's not only good advice for acting. That's pretty good advice, really, just as a transferable life skill. Yeah, you when you're going for a job interview, when you're meeting some new people, envision what the hell you're talking about so that you can feel like you're really passionate about what you're talking about. Yeah. Hang on, I've got a phone call coming in. Oh, whoops, I got to throw that out the window. Never mind. Okay, I envisioned that phone caller right out the door. There they go.
Oh God, Paul. Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh God. Another question I'd like to ask you about Singapore is now I know there isn't going to be one this year, but previous years there has been a Singapore Formula 1 Grand Prix. What is it like when Singapore sort of goes into F1 mode? How accessible is the city?
Very accessible because it's a huge tourist attraction, and so they make it super duper accessible. Singapore has kind of this image as a bit of an authoritarian government state, but I would have to say, yeah, it is a bit. They're pretty tight with rules and regulations and whatnot. But generally, people come and go freely, and people generally do what it is they want to do. So for F1, loads of tourists come in, and loads of locals just party. It's just one big giant party, and so all around the city, F1 will be on all the TVs and the bars and the clubs and stuff. And you can kind of hear, because Singapore is so small and we don't live all that far from the CBD, the Central Business District. We don't live far from it. So if we're real quiet outside on our balcony and listen carefully, you can kind of hear that high-pitched hum You know, that very, very shrill, just off in the distance, in the tropical distance. There they are, the F1. I've never been to it myself because they charge like what, $200 to $500 just to get into the gate where the main party is. Yeah, what? Come on, really? I'm old enough now to know what it's like to be in a crowded party. I don't need to pay $200 to do that anymore. So, and because of COVID, it's not happening anyway. So once COVID's over, I'm sure it'll be back to its usual party pace.
Yeah, interesting to hear that, because when I was over in Monaco, you know, a lot of everything would be so bordered off, and like pretty much all the streets wouldn't be accessible, and it was like some of the locals were a little
put off.
Not all of them, but a couple would be irritated that the F1 would be on, and be like, oh, it's May, F1's on, because the whole city would be blocked.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I mean, they have to block off, you know, the race course. That would be insane if they didn't. And they block off bits here and there, but the whole city is still pretty fairly accessible. I think Singapore does a pretty good job with it, to tell you the truth. And there will still be peripheral parties if you can't really get into the main party area. There are still, you know, popular clubs and areas where tourists would go and hang out to party. There's an area called Clark Quay. That whole area will be exploding with lots of action and drinking and partying and live music. So, you know, the party mindset and the party activities just swell. Of course, it's in the main central race area, but it grows to kind of, include areas outside that as well. So, you know, local businesses are going to take advantage of this heightened time of economy. So they, you know, offer the F1 deals and have your F1 happy hour. You know, there's a Irish pub right around the corner from where I live. It's called Scruffy Murphy's. And yeah. Scruffy Murphy's. I like Scruffy Murphy's. Yeah, and so I will drop by there once in a while. I almost sound like I must be some kind of an alcoholic. I keep talking about Irish pubs and beer, but I'm not. But I do enjoy a nice pint of Guinness once in a while. And Scruffy Murphy's is a great place to get one. There you go. I just did another commercial right there for you. I should have done it in my fake Irish accent. Well, now, come on down to Scruffy Murphy's here and get yourself a pint of beer. I sound like a stupid American who thinks he sounds like an Irish guy. Oh, well.
Paul, that was really close.
Really?
Yes, that was actually really good.
Well, this is only water, I can assure you. One of these days, I am going to go to Dublin. I really, really want to go to Ireland. My wife and my kids and I, we've always said, my wife is from England. And so, when we travel back home to see the family there, we always talk about making a stop in Ireland. And I've always just thought to go to Dublin would be so excellent, because I hear live music is really big there. And there's just a nice vibe about it, is what I hear. So I'd like to find out for myself. And I'd like to visit that Guinness brewery and see what that's like.
Well, you'll enjoy the Guinness brewery. You'll enjoy that. That is really good. It's
Why? What makes it so good?
Well, you got, firstly, it shows you how the Guinness is made. It shows you all the stuff. You can see some of the things being made. You can also see the lease for the entire St. James's Gate. You can see that as well. They have that on the ground in a little glass area, so that's there. And then you go up to the very top, you get a nice view of Dublin, and you also get to try a Guinness. You can get a Guinness there.
Oh, yeah.
I think they also have another one of their brands, Hop House 13 there. You can try that as well. And they just have view of Dublin, nice Guinness from the factory.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
What could be better? Come on.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, let me know when you're going to Dublin. I'll bring you there. I'm serious. I'll bring you. It's really good.
I'll call up my buddy Jack and we'll go do a Guinness together.
Yes. And by the time you arrive, I'll actually be able to drink Guinness. So yeah.
Oh, you're not legal age yet, huh?
No. Just 6 months to go.
Okay, I knew it. I knew you were a whippersnapper.
Oh, well, moving on from Ireland, you also did a couple of stand-in work that you were mentioning to me earlier while I was setting up all my microphones and stuff. Speak to me about the stand-in work. What's that like?
Stand-in work, excuse me. It's, if you can get it, it's excellent work. For an actor, it's really quite nice. You're a bit of an unsung hero as a stand-in, but it's because it's union work. Every actor really wants to work for the Screen Actors Guild because the pay is better. And so when I was in New York City, there was a TV show that was in production while I was there called The Sopranos, starring a guy named James Gandolfini. And in The Sopranos, there's it's about the mafioso of New York and New Jersey, right? And so it's an HBO show. And so there's a cast of shady characters, all mafia types. And one of the restaurants that the main stars would always go to featured this cook named Artie Bucco. And so Artie was kind of on the he was one of the inside guys with the main mafioso characters. And so the cook or the chef at this restaurant was a regular character. And the way stand-in works, and I was the stand-in for Artie Bucco, what they will do is cast actors to play the parts of the movie stars who play these characters. And the reason they do that is for rehearsal purposes. So, for example, I was the stand-in for Artie Bucco, that character, and whenever they would shoot a scene with Artie Bucco, I would rehearse with the technical crew his scenes so that he doesn't get tired. Rehearsing a tech rehearsal takes darn near all day long. Because setting up cameras, setting up lights, setting up tracking patterns, and all this stuff, it takes a hell of a long time, and it takes all day, and everybody gets really tired just rehearsing. So you have a cast of B actors, that'd be me, and we perform the scene for that shot, for all the shots. And then when we're done rehearsing after 6, 7, 8 hours, then the real movie stars, they come in, they know the traffic patterns that they got to do, and they just play the scene, and they can be done and over with it in, say, half an hour to maybe 2 hours max. And they haven't had to waste all their energy getting tired rehearsing the scene for the technical crew. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a stand-in is basically an actor. You got to learn the lines and you perform the scene just the same way as the big guys do. It's just that you will never, ever end up being in the show. You're just there for rehearsal purposes, right? You're kind of like not a stunt double, but an acting double for the actor, right? So that's why I say we're the unsung heroes, because we do all the hard work, step out, the shiny, nice, new-looking movie stars step in, do it all with a smile and a gleam in their eye, and then they they get the credit.
What was actually your favorite sort of show, theater show, or game, or whatnot to work on? What was your favorite one?
My favorite show to work on. Well, actually, probably The Sopranos was one of them. I also had a couple of parts, very small parts, in a show back in the early 2000s called Sex and the City.
Really?
Yeah, and
Oh.
in Sex and the City. When I first got this job, I was really excited. Oh my God, I'm going to be in this pretty popular, famous TV show. I got this just a small little part with this other guy. There was me, kind of I had a little bit more fuzz on the top of my head, but I had these black horn rim glasses. Again, I've always kind of played these nerdy, dweeby characters, right? I mentioned that earlier. And so for this Sex and the City scene, there was me, and there was this other guy who was a bit more rotund. He was kind of round shaped, and I was quite thin shaped. And we were the only guys, the other guys in this scene with two of the main characters. Amanda, the red-haired one, and the dark-haired one, Kristen Davis, I think. Kristen Davis, whatever her name is. The two of the main Sex and the City cast stars. And it's a bar scene. And they are talking to this guy at the bar, and the bartender's on the other side there. And they're talking to this really hot, hunky dude. He's looks like a model, a super handsome guy. So we show up for the job, this round guy and me. We're just kind of in the background, having a drink, and we're in the scene. And we're thinking, wow, we have really made it. Dude, we're high-fiving each other when we first show up, because we're thinking we've really done a big thing by getting on Sex and the City. And so then we start practicing the scene, and then we can hear the actresses saying their lines. And in the scene, that hunky hot model dude that they are really in love with, he walks out the door. And the two girls watch him go with this fawning, love in their eye look. And then they turn around and look throughout the bar, and there's just me and the round guy. And they turn and look at each other, and they say, well, that's that. Now all that's left are the fatties and the baldies. And they have a drink. So it was a harsh lesson to learn that I was hired because I was the baldy of the fatty and baldy team.
Oh, how cruel.
Ow. Talk about a blow to your ego. Yeah, I made it on Sex and the City as one of the fatties and the baldies.
What episode was that?
I couldn't tell you. I think it was toward the end of the show. Yeah, would have been one of the last seasons. Because, in fact, if not the last season, but I wouldn't know which episode that is. But yeah, there I am, one of the fatty and the baldy. We're all that's left in the bar. Yeah, nobody wants that.
I'll have to find that scene.
Yeah, I'm guessing it would have been either the last season or the second to the last season. But I couldn't tell you that. I mean, we're talking, what's that, 20 years ago. So
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, look for it. You'll see me.
Well, Paul, it was great chatting to you, and I do mean that. Is there any sort of last things that you'd like to say?
Final thoughts, final words. Well, if anyone out there is interested in gaming, give Shenmue a try. I would highly recommend the original Shenmue 1. Shenmue 3, You Won't See Me. I just made a poem. And if you're interested in performing and acting, never ever give up. And final thought, always follow your heart. Do that.
Yes, definitely. And definitely do play Shenmue 1. I definitely did not have it with me the entire time. But as well as that, Paul, is there also any sort of last thing that maybe Lan Di or Chai would like to say?
Go out there and do it. Got it?
Yes, sir! You get out there and do it!
Well, Paul, thank you very much for coming on the show. And yeah, speak to you soon.